They silent vianjuared. The stars seemed different from here. Commander Ilara Hayes stood at the observation deck of the UES Pathfinder, Earth's most advanced diplomatic vessel, as it glided toward the massive structure that housed the Galactic Concord. After decades of distant transmissions and cautious exchanges, humanity was finally taking its place among the stars. Hayes adjusted the collar of her formal uniform, the blue and silver of the United Earth Space Force contrasting with her dark skin. Her reflection in the viewport revealed the worried crease between her eyebrows that she couldn't quite smooth away. First contact jitters. Captain Julian Reeves appeared beside her, his uniform pristine, his weathered face revealing nothing of the tension that Hayes nodded. I noticed that too. We'd proceed with optimism but caution. Later that night, unable to sleep, Hayes decided to check the security systems she had installed near their quarters. As she passed through a dimly lit corridor, she heard voices, the distinctive hissing undertones of Phyrexians. Primitive, but their world is rich. The Council must not know. Hayes froze, pressing herself against the wall. The operation begins at their ship, another voice said. No survivors. Make it look like a system failure. Her heart hammering, Hayes retreated silently toward the human quarters. She had nearly reached the door when alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights pulsed red. Hayes sprinted the remaining distance, bursting into the common area where the delegation had gathered in confusion. Hostile contact, she shouted. Everyone back to the shuttle. Now. They had barely begun moving when the doors exploded inward. Armored Phyrexian troops poured in, weapons drawn. Captain Reeves managed to draw his sidearm, firing at the first attacker. The shot sparked against the Phyrexian's armor, but barely slowed it down. 3 more shots and Reeves fell, a smoking hole in his chest. This is a violation of diplomatic protocol. Ambassador Lai shouted as 2 Phyrexians seized her arms. The Concord guarantee our safety. The Concord sees what we wish it to see, one of the Phyrexians hissed. Hayes ducked behind an overturned table as plasma fire scorched the air above her. She knew they couldn't win this fight. Someone had to survive. Someone had to warn Earth. While the Phyrexians focused on subduing the others, Hayes slipped through a maintenance access panel she'd identified earlier. The narrow conduit led deeper into the station. Behind her, she heard screams cut suddenly short. Working from memory of the station schematic she'd studied, Hayes navigated toward a secondary docking area. Twice she had to hide as Phyrexian patrols passed. What struck her as odd was the absence of other Concord security forces. It was as if they were deliberately looking the other way. In the secondary bay, Hayes found a small courier vessel. She slipped aboard, thanking whatever gods might exist for the pilot training all security personnel received. As she initiated the launch sequence, she spotted movement on the main concourse, representatives from other Concord species watching Phyrexian troops move past. Not one intervened. The courier broke free from the station, automated systems protesting the unauthorized departure. Hayes plotted the fastest course to Earth, knowing the Phyrexians would pursue. As the ship accelerated to FTL speed, Hayes recorded a message. First contact compromised. Delegation presumed killed. The Phyrexians are hostile. The Concord won't help. Earth needs to prepare for war. 3 months later, Admiral Hale stood before the holographic display in Earth Defense Command's war room, her gray eyes fixed on the red swarm of simulated Phyrexian ships overwhelming Earth's defenses yet again. Run it again, she ordered. Change our formation to pattern echo. The technician reset the simulation. This time, the blue dots representing Earth's ships held longer but ultimately vanished under the alien assault. Admiral Hale closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her voice was steady but grim. Even with everything we have, we can't match their technology. The war room fell silent. Military leaders from a dozen countries exchanged worried glances. On wall screens, defense installations being built around the planet, new ships under construction in orbital docks, weapon systems being tested. Humanity was uniting as never before, but it wouldn't be enough. From the back of the room, Dr. Naresh Singh looked up from his workstation. The neuroscientist had been recruited from his university position the day after Hayes' return. "Maybe we don't need to," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. Admiral Hale turned. "Explain." Dr. Singh walked to the main display, transferring data from his tablet. 2 brain scans appeared, one human, one alien. "This is a Vrexian brain, constructed from the data Commander Hayes brought back." He pointed to the other scan. "And this is a human pilot during combat simulation." The differences were clear even to untrained eyes. Where the Vrexian brain showed orderly, sequential patterns of activity, the human brain lit up in seemingly chaotic bursts across multiple regions simultaneously. "Look at these patterns," Singh continued. "Human brains process combat decisions differently than any species we've encountered. We're messy, intuitive. We make logical leaps the Vrexians would consider random." "Interesting science," General Kwan said. "But how does this help us fight?" Dr. Singh smiled. "What if our ships could respond directly to these intuitive leaps? What if we could bypass the physical interface completely?" He brought up new schematics, a neural interface system unlike anything they had seen before. "I call it the neural link. It connects pilots directly to their ships. No controls, no delay. Think, and the ship responds." The room buzzed with excitement and skepticism. Admiral Hale studied the designs. "How soon can you test this?" "We have prototypes. We need volunteers." Across the room, a communications officer suddenly straightened. "Admiral, multiple FTL signatures detected at the edge of the solar system. Configuration matches Vrexian warships." Admiral Hale's face hardened. "Begin mass production of the neural link. Select our best pilots for immediate training." She turned to Hayes, who had been standing silently at the back of the room. "Commander, it seems your warning gave us just enough time. The war for humanity's survival is about to begin." DEFIANC unleashed. The first Vrexian attack struck Europa colony with devastating precision. The civilian settlement had minimal defenses. It was a research outpost, not a military installation. 12,000 settlers had less than an hour's warning before Vrexian destroyers appeared in orbit. Commander Ilara Hayes watched the footage in grim silence from Earth Defense Command. Escape pods streaked away from the burning station, but far too few. The Vrexians systematically targeted the colony's infrastructure, then methodically hunted down the fleeing vessels. "Bastards," Admiral Hale muttered beside her. "They're not just fighting a war, they're making a statement." Hayes nodded. "They want us to know resistance is futile." In the 3 weeks since the Vrexians entered the system, humanity had suffered a string of defeats. Mars orbital had fallen. The defense fleet at Jupiter had been scattered. Cut off from Earth, Luna Base had surrendered after a 2-day siege. Conventional warfare was failing exactly as the simulations had predicted. Earth's only remaining advantage was that the Vrexians were advancing methodically, consolidating each gain before moving inward toward Earth. It gave humanity time. Precious days that Dr. Singh's team was using to prepare their unconventional response. Hayes found the scientist in his laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by brain scans and simulation results. Despite not having slept in days, his eyes were bright with excitement. "It's working," he said without preamble when he saw Hayes. "The neural interface exceeded our expectations in the latest trials." He led her to an observation room overlooking a chamber where a pilot sat in what looked like a modified flight seat. Instead of controls, neural sensors connected to her flight suit at specific points along her spine and skull. "Lieutenant Maya Chen," Singh explained. "Former fighter pilot, now our most promising neural link candidate." Through the glass, Hayes watched as technicians completed final checks. Singh spoke into the comm system. "Remember, Lieutenant, don't try to control the simulator. Just react naturally, as if the ship is part of your body." Chen nodded, her expression focused. The neural link activated, and her body tensed momentarily as the connection established. Link stable, a technician reported. Brain activity normal. Singh initiated the combat simulation. On the main screen, they watched as Chen's simulated fighter engaged holographic Phyrexian ships. At first, her movements seemed tentative, but within minutes, something remarkable happened. The fighter began moving with impossible precision. It anticipated enemy attacks before they occurred, executing maneuvers that would tear a normal pilot apart from forces. The neural link translated Chen's combat instincts directly into action, bypassing the limitations of physical controls. Reaction time is 0.02 seconds, a technician announced, voice filled with disbelief. That's beyond anything physically possible. In the simulation, Chen's single fighter destroyed 20 enemy ships before the program ended. When the neural link disengaged, she slumped forward, exhausted but exhilarated. It was like I became the ship, she gasped. I could feel everything, the engines, the weapons, even the space around me. Hayes turned to Singh. How quickly can we deploy this? We've already begun adapting fighters. With proper resources, we could have a squadron ready in days. 3 days later, Hayes stood in the neural link chamber aboard the assault carrier Defiant. 12 pilots sat in a circle, each connected to their fighter craft through the interface Singh had created. They breathed in unison as the neural connection solidified. Admiral Hale's voice came through the ship's speakers. The Phyrexian fleet has breached Mars orbit. Their trajectory suggests they'll reach Earth in 18 hours. The main fleet cannot hold them. Your squadron is our best hope. Hayes opened her eyes. Through the neural link, she could feel her fighter craft as if it were her own body, the thrumming engines like a heartbeat, weapon systems tingling at her fingertips. Valkyrie Squadron acknowledges, she replied. We launch immediately. The Defiant entered the space between Earth and Mars. 12 neural link fighters secured in its launch bay. When they emerged from FTL, the Phyrexian fleet filled the viewport. 60 warships in perfect formation, advancing inexorably toward Earth. Pattern Omega, Hayes ordered, her thoughts flowing directly to her pilots through the neural link. No verbal communication was needed. Each pilot instantly understood the complex maneuver she envisioned. The 12 fighters launched, breaking into 4 groups of 3, approaching the Phyrexian fleet from different vectors. Their small size and Earth's latest stealth technology kept them off enemy sensors until they were almost upon them. The first Phyrexian ship to detect them was a destroyer at the fleet's edge. It turned ponderously, energy weapons charging. Before it could fire, Hayes's group shot past at speeds that should have been impossible to control. Their weapons fired in perfect sequence, targeting shield generators with surgical precision. Through the neural link, Hayes felt rather than saw the other fighters executing similar attacks on different vessels. The squadron moved with uncanny coordination, executing maneuvers the Phyrexian targeting systems couldn't predict. Where Phyrexian gunners expected them to be, they were already gone. They're adjusting formation. Lieutenant Chen's thoughts came through the link. The flagship is moving to the center of the fleet. Hayes processed this instantly. New objective. We isolate the flagship. In any conventional military, such an order would have been met with questions or objections. Through the neural link, her squadron simply acknowledged and adapted their plans. 6 fighters continued harassment attacks, while Hayes led the other 6 in a coordinated assault on the vessels protecting the Phyrexian flagship. The battle unfolded at breathtaking speed. 2 human fighters were hit, their pilot's pain flashing through the neural link before their connections went dark. The remaining 10 fought with increasing ferocity, their shared grief transforming into determination. The Phyrexian formation began to falter. Their rigid battle doctrine couldn't adapt to enemies who moved with such unpredictable precision. Ships that had sailed together for centuries now found themselves in each other's line of fire as they attempted to track the human fighters. Admiral Hale watched from Earth Defense Command, scarcely believing what the tactical displays showed. They're actually doing it, she whispered. The Neuralink squadron had created a corridor through the Vrexian fleet, isolating the flagship. As planned, Earth's conventional forces seized the opportunity, jumping in to engage the separated portions of the enemy fleet. Aboard the Vrexian flagship, High Imperator Sorzak watched in mounting disbelief as his carefully orchestrated invasion disintegrated into chaos. "Impossible," he hissed. These primitive creatures were assessed as no threat. His tactical officer's scales had dulled to a fearful gray. "They move in ways our targeting systems can't predict, Imperator. Their reaction speeds exceed our calculations." Sorzak moved to the command console, inputting his personal authorization code. A hidden chamber opened, revealing an ancient control system unlike the sleek technology that filled the rest of the bridge. "Imperator," his second cautioned, "the World Breaker has not been deployed since the Tauran uprising. The Concord believes it was destroyed." "The Concord believes what we tell them to believe," Sorzak replied coldly. "Prepare the World Breaker. End the human threat permanently." Outside, Hayes sensed a change in the flagship's energy signature. Through the neural link, she received tactical data from Earth Defense Command. Something was powering up inside the massive vessel, drawing energy from its other systems. "All fighters, converge on the flagship," she ordered. "Whatever they're activating, we need to stop it now." The neural link squadron regrouped, all 10 remaining fighters forming a spear formation. As they approached the flagship, its surface shifted, panels retracting to reveal a massive energy weapon unlike anything in Vrexian's known arsenal. Hayes felt a momentary surge of fear ripple through the neural link. The weapon was aimed directly at Earth, already beginning to glow with gathered energy. Together, Hayes thought, and the squadron responded as one. They struck the flagship at a structural weak point Singh's team had identified from Hayes' stolen data. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, the combined energy piercing the flagship's shields at exactly the same point. The flagship's hull breached precisely as its weapon reached critical power. Energy meant for Earth's destruction backflowed into the vessel's own systems. The Vrexian flagship shuddered, then exploded in a blinding flash that consumed several nearby support vessels. The remaining Vrexian fleet faltered, their rigid command structure disrupted by the loss of their leader. Earth's conventional forces pressed the advantage, forcing the invaders into retreat. 6 hours later, Hayes stood in Admiral Hale's office. Through the window, she could see the lights of Denver spread out below the mountain complex. Cities around the world had their lights on tonight, a defiant gesture to show the retreating Vrexians that Earth still stood. "The neural link made the difference," Hale said, sliding a tablet across her desk. "We've intercepted communications from the Galactic Concord. Your little squadron has the entire galaxy talking." The tablet showed translated messages from various Concord species, most expressing shock at the Vrexian defeat. More interestingly, several mentioned delegations seeking direct contact with Earth, species that had apparently suffered under Vrexian dominance for centuries. "We've been invited to send representatives to the Concord," Hale continued. "This time, we'll choose our friends more carefully." Hayes set down the tablet. "What about the neural link program?" "Full production authorized. Dr. Singh believes we can outfit an entire fleet within 6 months." Hale gave a rare smile. "It seems humanity has something unique to offer the galaxy after all." That night, Hayes stood at the observation deck of Earth Defense Command. Looking up at the stars, they seemed different now, not distant points of light, but places humanity would soon reach. Places where the name Earth was being spoken with newfound respect. The galaxy had trembled at human fury, but it would come to know human friendship as well. And any species that mistook human kindness for weakness would learn what the Vrexians had discovered at terrible cost. When threatened, humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability. The stars awaited, and this time, humanity would approach them not as supplicants, but as equals.